It's a cornucopia of BBC geek goodness as we review the Dracula miniseries and the first 2 episodes of Season 12 of Doctor Who. All this and more on today's episode of the Geek Watch podcast.
This is the Geek Watch podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 95 of the Geek Watch podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hello, Brian.
So a lot of BBC to talk about, but before we get to that, they released a couple of trailers, one that dropped just hours before we started recording, but I did want to talk about the new Netflix Lock & Key trailer that just came out.
Yeah.
So, wow, does that look amazing.
Right? I don't even know how to... not being really familiar with Lock & Key, but it's as if the house with the clock in its walls and a series of unfortunate events like had a baby and it was this. So it's really, it's crazy looking, and the effects, it just looks really cool.
Well, I mean, it originated as a comic book that was written by Joe Hill. Of course, it has a huge backstory involved with it. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on. I forget how many issues the series ran, but it ran for a while. So there's a lot of story to be told in Lock & Key, and it looks like they've cast it really well. And yet, like you say, the effects look amazing. Mm-hmm. It looks like it's going to be an interesting roller coaster ride. It's that line between fantasy and horror that I really like, and it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's coming out in February.
So it's just February 7th or something. Really close.
Yeah, right around the corner. So we'll definitely be able to check that out. And they did drop a trailer, like I said, just a few hours ago, a new trailer for Birds of Prey, the Warner Brothers film. I was going to go see it anyway, but I have to say the new trailer does have me a little more intrigued for sure. I mean, we do get to see a little bit more of the tone of the film.
Yes, much more of the other girls. We get to see the team, and, seeing like Cassandra Cain and Huntress, and, that's really exciting to me.
Oh, yeah. It's sort of got that Ocean's 11 feel to it.
Yeah.
Or in this case, I would say Ocean's 8.
Ocean's 8, yeah.
Ocean's 8 because, you can definitely tell there's a little bit of the Deadpool style humor going to be in this one.
I can see that. Yep.
That shows in the trailer. And you see a lot of that in the animated series. So that was one thing that is kind of weird to me. Of course, they're releasing this movie and they already have the animated series on DC Universe that I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but everybody that I know who's seen it are just raving about it.
That's what I've heard too. I haven't seen it, but same thing.
Like I said, it's kind of weird that you've put that thing out and now you're going to be doing a movie. Well, of course, at one time they had like 4 Harley Quinn movies greenlit. Of course, one was the Gotham City Sirens film that the last that I heard news-wise was that's kind of been put on the back burner, which I can understand. I mean, there's you're going to have a Harley Quinn overload. I mean, Suicide Squad 2, will be coming out here in the next, I think it's next year. So, I mean, you can't do everything, you got to kind of back off a little bit for sure. But, I have to say that the trailer's got me intrigued. It's a superhero movie. I'm going. So, I mean, I'm not a hard sell by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, I'm interested to see what they do with this. It looks like it's going to be a fun movie, and maybe a fun movie in the way that I was hoping that Suicide Squad was going to be and didn't quite reach.
Okay.
And one of the things, too, that I think in an interview, Margot Robbie mentioned how this is not going to be like linear storytelling. And you see that in the trailer where you see something and then you
and then she actually says,
"Oh, I'm telling this wrong. Let me
go back. Yeah.
Let me go back." Which is something, of course, they do in the Deadpool movies.
Not much fourth wall breaking, but the voiceover kind of,
Yeah, and you get a lot of jumping back and forth, especially in the first one. You have these time jumps and wait a minute, let me explain to you what happened. Let's go back. Things like that. So it looks like they're taking that out of the Deadpool playbooks, which I don't have a problem with.
Right.
So we'll have to check that out. Of course, I've been watching Geek News for any kind of information we can get on the Marvel films. And of course, that is a slippery slope that goes right into the Sarlacc pit because you get the weirdest stuff that comes out. Again, this is all, take it with a grain of salt. I saw one article that mentioned that for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, they are in talks with David Tennant to be Nightmare.
Wow, that's a little too fanboy. I mean, that's too much. Like the Cumber Cookies would love it. The Whovians would love it. It's just a little. That seems too much like a dream come true.
Yeah,
it would be awesome. I would love it. Everyone would love it.
Yeah.
But it sounds a little too much like a dream come true.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I saw it one place. So, but again, Marvel has always been careful to keep spoilers to the minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So all that we really get in the beginning is, speculation. So, but then you hear these crazy things pop out. And I forget what character it was. It was like a son of Voom, or I can't remember what the name of this character was. They said was going to be in the Doctor Strange movie. It's like a really, 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 really deep cut that not a whole lot of people know about, which is something Marvel would definitely do. But it's like the director was like, no, we're not doing that. I was like, do I have to do this? Which is, like I said, that's, Marvel, of course, they don't tell you anything. They may let something slip. I wouldn't even necessarily call it a leak, but, they'll give you a little hint of something. For example, they have confirmed that Christian Bale is going to be in Thor Love and Thunder.
Okay.
Doing what? Which they haven't said. But, of course, since they haven't said, we get speculation. And the number one speculation right now that I keep seeing in places, of course, again, this is speculation because Marvel hasn't announced anything. But they're saying that Christian Bale, the speculation is he's going to be playing Beta Ray Bill, which, again, that's kind of a deep cut if you don't know a lot about Thor. But Beta Ray Bill is a horse-headed alien who turned out to be worthy enough to lift Thor's hammer and became an avatar of Thor to such a degree that Odin made him his own hammer. And so the hammer in the comics was known as Stormbringer. So Beta Ray Bill, he's like I said, he's a yellow horse-headed alien who has he wears Thor's costume and he has a hammer.
Okay, so we're looking at BoJack Horseman dressed as Thor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. But that, like, again, it's all speculation because Marvel, of course, isn't saying a damn thing. But again, when you get into those situations, it's when you don't have information, of course.
People make it up.
People will fill the void. And again, it can be very treacherous when you're going over geek news like I am. You see these clickbaity titles, and you're like, what the heck is this? And you have to start doing your research because, again, you get all this kind of crazy stuff that comes up and all this wild speculation. But of course, the minute the Marvel announces anything concrete, we'll definitely be talking about it. I did want to talk a little bit of comic book stuff and I wanted to mention this because I know you don't read a lot of comics, but this might be something that you decide you want to read. It hit the stands January the 7th. In time for his 73rd birthday, Insight Comics did a graphic novel called Bowie, Stardust, RAYGUNS, and Moonage Daydreams.
Oh, I hope it's the story of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars.
Yes, that's part of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's biographical. It talks about a lot of the stuff. The book actually opens with David Bowie announcing the retirement of Ziggy Stardust, but then it goes back
to Hammersmith Odin.
Yes. And it talks about that part of it, but then it goes back. It's basically a graphic novel that's a biography.
Wow.
And it talks about it. Yeah, so that's out in stands now, but I definitely wanted to mention that. And I've seen some of the illustrations, and the artwork is just amazing. It's Mike and Laura Allred, who did Madman and iZombie. They're doing basically the credits of this. They set it up like a movie. So Mike Allred is listed as the director and is co-screenwriter with Steve Horton, who did Satellites Falling. And so, it's really Technicolor. It's the artwork is amazing. And again, it talks a lot about, David Bowie's early life and, different things like, for example, they wanted to cast him in Son of Dracula. and he couldn't do it because he was too busy at the time. But
so then he did The Hunger to make up for it.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, it talks about a lot of his early life, and of course Ziggy Stardust and all of that, and the Spiders from Mars. But
you know how much it has on his brother Terry. That was a big influence in his life.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
It just came out, and it's definitely one I'm going to check out, and I figure you'll probably
very cool
be checking that out as well. Well, let's talk some BBC. And we have to start out with the 3-episode miniseries on Dracula, which I've seen too.
You haven't seen? Okay.
I've not seen the third one yet.
Okay.
I haven't seen the one where some people say they jumped the shark, which you've seen the whole thing.
I've seen the whole thing. Uh-huh.
Now, one thing I have to say, though, is I saw where you posted on Facebook and you compared the early Dracula to Judge Valkenheiser from Nothing But Trouble. You made that comment. He looks like
he looked exactly like yes.
Which I have to say, I was like, Mandy, you made a reference to Nothing But Trouble. You made a reference to just when I thought I couldn't fall in love with you anymore.
Nothing But Trouble. I still have nightmares about that movie.
I remember that movie when it was in the theaters.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I mean, I remember when it was at the Park Place, and I mean, I have to say, I'm very much into transgressive things, and the fact that a studio went to Dan Aykroyd and said, "Hey, whatever you want to do, man," which they did, and like I said, I enjoyed that film.
And then he called up John Candy and was like, "Hey, how many characters you want to play?" And
well, he plays a couple of characters because he plays Bobo also. But the thing about it was, it was one of those movies you weren't exactly sure what kind of film it was. Is it a comedy?
Is it horror?
Is it horror? It's a little.
I'm still scared of it.
Like I said, I enjoyed it. Although I have to say, after seeing it, I couldn't eat hot dogs for a minute. Oh my god! But it was, it was definitely one of those crazy films.
Yeah, things that you didn't know were frightening, like a room full of stuffed animals.
Oh,
that's absolutely frightening. And yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's one of those films that you didn't realize Demi Moore was in it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and I'm, I don't know how long it stayed on her resume. Although, like I said, I mean, as a comedy, it worked for me. Like I said, it was a very transgressive comedy. Yeah. With some serious horror elements in it.
Yeah.
It's definitely kind of a weird film to watch, but like I said, the fact that you even brought that up as a reference, I admire you even more now than before. So you saw all three episodes. Yeah. So what did you think?
Well, I don't want to get too spoilery into it, but having known that it was the same people that brought us Jekyll and Sherlock, and, especially when you get into that third episode, you saw this coming. So when people are saying that it jumped the shark, I don't see that because this is what I was expecting. The way it tells the story, the way it adapts the story is interesting. And it's, I don't want to say a fresh take on it because it's really, I don't know that Dracula really has a fresh take. And it's not something that maybe you really want it to have, like Pride and Prejudice, there are like 18 Pride and Prejudice, but love every one of them. They're still the exact same.
Right.
So I guess the perspective at which it's told, it's kind of told through Harker's, because it's the novel is very epistolary, right?
Right.
It's letters, it's things, it's different people saying different things, and they kind of go with that. So you sort of go back and forth, but of the three, it is like for me, just like Disenchantment, this is the bronze medal of those three. I think a few years ago, I would have been just over the moon over this. Like, this is awesome. This is amazing. But now that I saw Jekyll, now that I've seen Sherlock, I was like, this could have, I kind of wanted more from it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. I do have to say it was a pleasant surprise to see Dolly Wells as Sister. Yeah. I have to say, and of course, I saw her from, and again, going back to how much I love transgressive things, I remember her as a character the character Dolly in Noel Fielding's Luxury Comedy, using the same German accent. And she's, she's a painter / model / interior decorator who, on occasion becomes vegan, in the most inconvenient times. And seeing her as sister Agatha.
Agatha.
Harkness. Agatha Harkness. No,
Van
Helsing. Van Helsing. Good Lord.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Van Helsing is a woman in this, so if that's going to, make the whiny man babies mad, don't watch it.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is this is, it's Dracula adjacent. Mm-hmm. But it's not a word for word retelling of the original novel because there are things that are different, certainly.
Oh, very.
But but the the sassy attitude of the sister, very much like the character that she played.
I love the line. Well, they ask her, if you don't believe in God, why are you still a nun? And she says, like many women my age, I'm stuck in a loveless marriage for the sake of a roof over my head. It's beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it so far, although I have to say it has, with a lot of my friends, it's, again, which I think is, is the mark of good art, is that you don't get a lot of ambivalent answers. You don't get a lot of reviews that are like, well, it was just okay.
Right? Yeah.
They either really, really liked it or they really, really hated it. And I think, honestly, it has a lot to do with how... I think the people who didn't like it were the ones who were really looking for like a slavish retelling of Dracula, which is not what you get here.
No,
for sure.
and like I said, because of Jekyll, because of Sherlock, I wasn't looking for that.
Right.
And when Dracula has been modernized, it's Dracula 2000, I think was one of them.
Dracula Unbound.
Yes, it's the Dracula story just set in modern times. It's all right. I guess. I like what they did with his makeup and style and everything. He kind of goes back to that sort of, I guess, Christopher Lee period.
You can definitely, the Hammer films are obviously a major inspiration. Just with, when Dracula goes into his bloodlust and you see his eyes change, that is directly Christopher Lee, because that was absolutely the same thing. Yep. So, but yeah, I really did enjoy it. And of course, if you're a fan of the BBC and of course, Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat.
So you haven't seen Mark Gatiss's role yet?
No, I have not. Okay. Because I haven't seen the third one yet.
Okay, he's in the third one. So I didn't know if you knew he was in it or if you knew who he was playing.
Well, that's a Mark Gatiss thing is whenever he's right, he puts himself in. But the thing about it is when you have Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss, you're going to get little hints of different things that they've already done. I love the Sherlock reference in the first episode where
did I miss it?
That was how the sister found Mina. She had a detective friend in London who was able to track her down.
Okay.
But that's not the only references. Another reference was, of course, the letter that Mina sends to Jonathan Harker. And, the whole thing is, the whole comment that she made about, hopefully you'll be faithful, but, I have a lot of
options.
I have a lot of options. And one of them she mentions is that adorable barmaid from The Rose and Crown, which, if you remember the snowman from Doctor Who.
That's where...
That was, that was a Clara reference. Clara Oswald
worked
reference.
There.
Yeah, so apparently the Doctor Who universe and the Dracula universe, they're together for sure. And of course, I have to mention the one last reference because it's going to lead into the next thing that we talk about was, of course, when we wind up on the Demeter, we see Sacha Dhawan playing Dr. Sharma. And of course, he's in Doctor Who.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. So since we're mentioning Doctor Who, we might as well talk about the episodes that he was in, which of course is parts 1 and 2 of Spyfall. So, after all, it is January, so you know what that means, folks. That's right. It's time to talk Doctor Who.
What the Who?
That's right. And so the first episodes of seasons 11 or 12, seasons 12, was a two-parter, which, of course, this was a complete different take on than, of course, the last season. Last season, they were all self-contained stories. They were all pretty much tied into themselves and not, there was no overarching story. But now, apparently, we have started the beginning of what's going to be an arc over season 12. And so as far as episode 1's concerned, of course, there's the one thing everybody talks about, which is the big reveal at the end, which
ta-da.
Ta-da. So how caught up are you? Let me ask you that.
I've seen them both. Yep.
You're totally caught up.
Totally caught up.
So What did you think of that reveal?
I was like, seeing him and realizing what really got me was when he pulled out the matchbox and he opened it up and like it brought about like, classic Who.
Right.
I absolutely remember the Master turning people into dolls. That was the big thing. And
right.
So that was a nice throwback for classic Whovians. And then but more modern, and I love this. I love this Master. He's kind of got that giddiness to him. I mean, I've got my theories about him. What do you feel about him?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people who've been saying that it seems like, number one, if he's the regeneration after Missy, how did that happen? Because supposedly Missy was flat out just killed.
Yeah, that's not my theory. I don't think he is.
Yeah. Yeah, because the other part of it that doesn't make sense to me is that Missy as a character, there was an arc. Things had changed with that character.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like in that situation, they kind of threw it all away.
Yep.
Which, in a way, they've kind of done that before with Missy. It's like, it seems like when the Master regenerates, any kind of arc just kind of disappears, which I don't think that they're doing here. I wonder, although it seemed like they were saying that Missy was the regeneration after John Sims' Doctor, I wonder if that may not have been the case.
I think this Master O was being absolutely honest when he said, I met the Doctor once when she was a man. And I really think that this is one of our earliest sights of the Master, that he is so early in his timeline that this might be only his second regeneration ever.
Yeah.
And I think this is a very young Master, and he's got this, this anger toward his parent, and very kind of teenagery. He's got this anger toward the rest of the Time Lords, and that's why he's still kind of hanging on to this. Everything you've been told is a lie.
Yeah.
Sort of,
One thing I would say that I think maybe agrees with your theory is the TCE, the tissue compressor eliminator that he has, does seems to be a little more primitive than ones we've seen in the past.
Okay.
So maybe that might be the case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like, as far as the Master's concerned, that he would be a Master, say, after Missy.
Mm-hmm.
So where he falls in the timeline, there's no telling.
Mm-hmm.
Although there was a moment where Missy did say that he knew the Doctor when she was a little girl, and
okay,
when was the Doctor ever a girl? So there might be that situation where So I mean, there's no telling for sure, but exactly where he fits in the timeline, we don't know yet. But I do have to say, of course, the two the parts 1 and 2, of course, it was called SPYFALL as a takeoff of Skyfall. So there was a lot of James Bond type action in this one. And it's like I said before, a lot of the issues that I had with season 11, it was like they decided to solve all of them in season 12 in those 2 episodes, because like I said, the funny thing about all of it was it's like a lot of people said, well, it doesn't seem like the Doctor's ever challenged, and boy, did the Doctor seem challenged in those 2 episodes. And, people had problems with the fact that there wasn't a lot of tie-ins to the
Classic Who.
To Classic Who, or even
New Who.
New Who. It was trying to be its own thing. And I mean, this definitely goes back into the vaults to pull out references. Again, you get a little bit of timey-wimey stuff, which we haven't done in a while. The whole thing about, well, I know this plane's going to crash, so while it's being built, I'm going to put all this stuff into it
and
to make sure that
don't talk to the recording, but of course, going to talk to the recording. That was very Weeping Angels. I love that.
Oh yeah, well yeah, you had that. You did have that Weeping Angels reference in there. Yeah, there was a lot of that really interesting stuff, and of course, we had in the second part, you get a bunch of time travel.
Yeah.
But I do have to say, Sacha Dhawan's take on the Master, I'm really enjoying it right now. I
do.
Really enjoy it.
I like him a lot.
Yeah, I'm, of course, we this Sunday we're going to get a new episode. Where it's going to go, I'm not sure. But the big thing, of course, is we do get the reference from the last season, this whole issue with the Timeless Child, that comes back, and of course we also find out spoilers. We did warn you there was going to be spoilers, but Gallifrey's been destroyed again. So it's like,
or has it? That's everything we've been told is a lie, though. So
yeah, well, I mean, apparently everything that we know about the Time Lords over the 50-some years that we've been watching Doctor Who, all of it is screwy. we've known that they're not what they seem for sure, because of course when we first met them, they were supposed, they were the all-powerful race of the galaxy who never interfered, only observed, and didn't get into trouble. And then there was always these moments. I even remember back in the Fourth Doctor with things that would happen where you found out the Time Lords interfered when they shouldn't have, where they think something is dire and they felt justified to do it. So you could always tell that there were those moments where, well, it was like when they took the Doctor out of his timeline and sent him to Skaro to prevent the creation of the Daleks. Mm-hmm. So definitely the Time Lords, they talked a certain game, but then they acted a different way. But, the thought that, Time Lords aren't at all what people thought that they were. Even the stuff we knew in their past was kind of messed up. But the question is going to be this, and as a writer, I'm curious to see where they're going to go with this. But something so dramatic, something so tragic that, the Master decided to destroy Gallifrey over it, to burn it down, to nuke it, as he put it. Of course, he's a villain.
Mm-hmm. I just got to think, if this is an early Master, is this the first time that, was this Gallifrey Falls no more? Is this what he's seeing for the first time?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. The thing about it is, of course, you have to understand too, and this is what's kind of, to me, it's where I want to see where they go with this, is because, again, apparently this was something that was so horrible that it broke the Master. It's like even he, who doesn't have that much respect for the Time Lords to begin with, that this was too far even for him, that he felt like he needed to act because of it. And it's, as a writer, I know that if you're going to make that kind of a promise to the audience, man, you got to deliver on it, and it's like, I can't possibly imagine what that is. But I'm anxious to find out. I'm eager to see where they go with this storyline, this whole thing with the Timeless Child, because that was one thing with Stephen Moffat, and we've talked about this before. One of his favorite things to do was to set up something and see how he could get himself out of it. He'd paint himself in a corner. He'd, like the Doctor's name or Trenzalore or something like that. And, something that had a lot of promise story-wise, where you were like, God, I just want to, what the heck is this all about? And then, of course, he'd have to eventually get himself out of that corner, and he didn't always stick the landing. Let's be honest. Some of it didn't work out as well. And I don't know if Chris Chibnall was of this, if he did the same thing, where this whole thing with the Timeless Child was, he threw that in there, and then he's decided to bring this thing back out. But, again, is he doing the Moffat thing where he's painting himself into a corner to see if he can write himself out of it? I don't know if that's what's happening. I don't think so. I think that he's got a plan, and he knows what he's going to do with this. Now, like I said, this whole idea of, again, the second destruction of Gallifrey, that everything that about the Time Lords is a lie, and it's horrible. The truth is way too horrible to bear, even for a villain like the Master. Eventually, they're going to have to let the other shoe drop, and can they deliver on it? That's going to be the thing. And I'll be tuning in to find out for sure. But yeah, I mean, these 2 episodes delivered a lot of what I wanted to see in Doctor Who. I wanted to see her challenged, and she definitely was. I wanted to see more of the time travel aspect, and we got it. We got to see some intrigue. We got to see the Doctor get upset finally. We got to see how the Doctor handles herself when she's out of her, when, she doesn't have all the answers. And we got to see a little bit of her dark side as well, which, that was the thing about the Doctor, especially in New Who, is this whole, the darker aspects of the Doctor. We're now finally starting to see that in Jodie Whittaker's portrayal of the Doctor, which definitely has me excited for sure. So, have you seen the trailer for the next episode?
I don't think I have.
Yeah. They find themselves on a resort planet, and there's obviously something going on in the background.
Okay.
Here's the thing about it also. There was a set photo that was released that's Graham. Basically, it's Graham, and he's looking at this glowing white cube in the TARDIS, which, if you remember from Doctor Who, specifically from the Doctor's wife, these glowing cubes are message cubes from Time Lords. So is this another Time Lord message cube that Graham's holding on to? It certainly looks like one. So again, we're like, is this going to be another piece of this puzzle of what this timeless child thing is? Well, I guess we'll find out, certainly.
We'll see.
So the next episode will be coming out Sunday. Mm-hmm. And once we've seen it, we're definitely going to talk about it here on the podcast. And so with that said, we come to the end of episode 95 of the Geek Watch podcast. Thank you for listening, and tune in next week for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. For Mandy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.